When you have a power outage here, we also have power outage. But I'm also aware of the electricity problems that Zambia is facing. But despite the problems that we have with the supply of electricity in Zambia, you still supply us with electricity. Again, you would have said we cannot sacrifice our power when we have shortage. But you still give us. Katima Mlilo town, where I come from here, is supplied with power from Zambia. When you have a power outage here, we also have power outage. But that's the brotherhood we are talking about, the neighborhood we're talking about. And we should only be grateful and continue to exist in this manner. You spoke also about the Walsbay-Ndola-Lumbumbashi corridor. I want to tell Your Honor that that corridor was developed during our time. I was Permanent Secretary of Works and Transport, and my counterpart here was Judge Sichinga, Dominic.
The power issue, I think, is huge here, and colleagues, we continue to share everything. The issue of power, SC, you know, when you are in a country like mine, when we have passed through a lot of load shedding, people say, oh, so you see, they are selling power to Namibia. This is a town in Namibia, very close to Zambia. We are talking of one-stop border, for example. And if you have one town with blackout, then how do you do 24-hour? But this was an agreement, that is the only thing I would add, was an agreement that was signed in 2020 between Zambia and Namibia. And you don't give up or relegate such commitments. As you have seen, Zambia is a reliable friend to everybody that they work with. So we don't just say because the situation has come, when in fact there is no other solution on the other side.
So we urge our citizens that they remain calm. We can see light at the end of the tunnel, and that tunnel is now becoming shorter by the day. As we speak, we now have unprecedented rains in the last maybe 2 decades. And with those rains, yesterday Cabinet was informed that load shedding is likely to begin to diminish by June 2025. This is because the major water catchment areas of northwestern province into the Barotse, plains, and now also the Kafue, flood plains. Water takes 3 months journey to move from Kaleni Hills, from Chavuma, into Victoria Falls, into Kariba. 3 solid months. Water moves very slowly in the plains because it's flat.
Flanked by his wife Mate and grandchild Wakisa Kabaye, Finance and National Planning Minister Situmbeko Musokotwane firmly clasped the iconic copper briefcase containing the national budget speech. With measured steps, Dr. Musokotwane ascended the grand concrete staircase of the National Assembly. In his address, the Finance Minister said the proposed national budget was pegged at 253 billion kwacha, a 36 billion kwacha increase from the 217 billion kwacha for 2025.
I propose to spend a total of 253.1 billion kwacha, or 27% of GDP. This will be financed from domestic revenues of 206.5 billion. In other words, almost 82% of the budget will be financed by our own efforts. Madam Speaker, grants from cooperating partners will be 12.1 billion, or 4.8% of the total budget, and the balance of 34.5 billion, or 3.7% of GDP, will be financed through domestic and external borrowing.
Dr. Musokotwane says the budget is anchored on key macroeconomic objectives designed to sustain growth and restore stability.
A, attain real GDP growth rate of 6.4%. B, reduce inflation to the 6 to 8% target band. C, maintain gross international reserves above 4 months of import cover. D, increase domestic revenue to at least 22.3% of GDP. E, reduce fiscal deficit to 2.1% of GDP. And F, limit net domestic borrowing to 2.3%.
And the finance minister also said government has created several multi-facility economic zones to spur value addition and job creation.
We have ceramic factories in the Lusaka M-Phase. We have steel factories in the Lusaka M-Phase. We have a starch factory in the Lusaka M-Phase. We have a milk processing factory in the Lusaka M-Phase. We have copper rods. We have electric cables. We have conductors, pharmaceutical products, all happening today in the Lusaka multi-facility economic zone. Madam Speaker, the Jiangxi multi-facility economic zone in Chivombo. This has also attracted investment in excess of 128 million. What do you see there, Madam Speaker? In the Chivombo multi-facility economic zones, batteries are being manufactured, batteries are being recycled, copper cables are being manufactured.
And Dr. Musokotwane reviewed that the country's export earning increased to $8.8 billion as of August 2025, compared to $7.2 billion in the same period in 2024. Dr. Musokotwane further proposed the waiving of tax on equipment used to assemble tipper trucks and electric vehicles to promote assembling of the same in Zambia.
I propose to remove customs duty on complete knockdown components. I propose to remove customs duty on complete knockdown components for the assembly of motor vehicles, including tippers, electric vehicles, tricycles, motorcycles, truck trailers, and tractors. Madam Speaker, watch the space, because we are doing this so that these items can be manufactured locally in Zambia.
Dr. Musokotwane also proposed the increase of excise duty on single-use plastics from 30% to 100%.
Thank you very much. Welcome to today's broadcast. Today we are reviewing the national budget that was presented by Dr. Situmbeko Musokotwane in Parliament today. He presented a budget of $253 billion, which is roughly around $10.5 billion. And he says the budget will be funded through tax revenues, non-tax revenues, grants and debt, and the total revenue and grants are coming to around $218 billion, and he hopes to use the to finance a deficit of 34 billion kwacha by borrowing from the market and international external financing. I've always criticized the structure of our budget, that is not transformative. It doesn't change our lives. It is routine. I've always felt that our budget could be better, probably could be better expanded. It doesn't meet our needs. It will take us maybe 50 to 60 years to be in any way to change our lives. But in the manner that this budget is presented, its structure, and its sources of financing. For me, it leaves much to be desired. We have to rethink this budget. But this is what we have, and then we'll subject it to a review. I'm privileged that I'm hosting, People's Alliance chairperson, President, Mr. Andyford Banda. He's not chairman, he's president. Mr. Andyford Banda, welcome back to our podcast, Emmanuel Mwamba Verified, and I'm glad that today you'll be helping me verify the issue of the national budget.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I'm grateful for your invite, especially on this important day where the UPND presented their last budget after their 5 years in power. Time flies so fast.
Wonderful.
But thank
wonderful.
you, and thank you to everyone.
You've had a look at this national budget, 253 billion budget, $10.5 billion. I think last year's budget was around $8 billion. This is $10 billion, $2 billion more. And the minister is very ambitious. He says it will be financed locally, but we know what it means. It means he will borrow, other than from tax and non-tax revenues, he will literally tax us more and, borrow more on the market. And our national debt, foreign national debt, has jumped from, it was $11.9 billion as of 2021. It's now standing at $15.7 billion. So they've borrowed about $3.5 billion or more. When you saw this budget presented, what was your reflection? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, a bit concerned, like you mentioned, due to the structure of our budget. Like you mentioned again, I want to agree with you that it's not transformative. Also, the fact that the government has increased the budget, which was expected, because obviously there are a number of areas that they need to spend, we go towards the elections next year. So we did expect that there will be increments, the budget to be increased. But what's worrying is that domestic borrowing has increased significantly in this year's budget. I think last year's budget, gross domestic borrowing was about 76 billion kwacha, but this year it's running at 106 billion kwacha. Obviously, much of it is to service debt refinancing of domestic debt. So it's worrying because the government is trying to paint a good picture of how they're doing well, but when it comes to resource mobilization, we are increasing the debt that we have as a country, whether it's domestic or external. Like you mentioned, the external debt has increased to 15.7 billion as of now. Then the fact that the government plans to borrow more from the local market or from the domestic market, it means that it will be a very stiff period for small and medium enterprises who will not even have a chance to borrow money from the banks, because most of the money will be crowded, by the government. It will be in the government securities. So it's quite worrying in that regard. Yes, on the other hand, whatever incremental or progress that can be preached is not revolutionary. It is, I can call it organic. It's expected. Economic activities normally grow, and what we've seen with successive governments is that they'll always report that organic growth like it is they're doing, which is not the case. I think, like you mentioned, this budget is not transformative. The growth is not revolutionary, but it's worrying also that we have leaders that will present the growth as if it's the initiative, because it's expected, that when you collect taxes, for example, you have to build schools, you have to build hospitals, you have to buy medicine. So if you're doing that, then, I mean, why should, we clap for you? So we need to look at the nitty-gritties of a budget, like how are you raising the funds? I mean, if you're crowding out funds from the market, if you're increasing borrowing, then we have a problem. Regardless of what progress there is, then we have a problem there. Hello, Ambassador.
Can you hear me? Did you hear my question, Mr. President?
I didn't get your question. I think you went offline.
Yeah, I was saying that
Technology.
the budget has a deficit of 34 billion and they have to borrow 218 billion. The minister says you raise from tax and non-tax revenue and grants and also external loans. When you look at this, the huge numbers, I'm saying this because when you look at last year's budget, they present a budget, but by the end of the year, he comes with another supplementary budget, huge figures again, in excess of something like $2 billion, where he wanted certain sectors financed or refinanced. Are these figures even reliable? Is the ambition supported by our resources?
I think I would also question, the figures, more so that we are not getting a lot of external debt, and the liability of these figures also is based on the trend, that we can look at from the time that the UPND came into government, because they have been increasing, based on their numbers, they've been increasing the budget. I think they started from 117, now we're over 100 billion. So the question is that, are we really seeing the impact, or are these figures really being made or target? So it's the figures are quite questionable, looking at the jump. But what's more worrying is the fact that, this budget, where they're saying that about 80% will be financed through taxes, we had hoped that, the private sector that had complained over, tax hikes in the last budget would get some relief. But clearly, there's no relief that is coming that way. Then we have the crowding of domestic funds, as we've already explained. Now, there is no ambition in the budget, really, Ambassador, to actually transform the economy, to revolutionize the economy so that we can actually increase domestic revenue collection. One of the ways to increase domestic revenue collection is actually to ensure that we start resetting the economy so that Zambians can have a guaranteed role to play in the economy. That is one of the ways that we can do that. Now, for as long as we are going to rely on foreign investors that come, they make the profits, and they don't reinvest the profits within the local economy, they repatriate the profits to go and develop the other economies, they repatriate the profits to go and stimulate another economy, we are not going to increase, domestic revenue collection at a good rate. What we need is to ensure that Zambians have a guaranteed role to play. You saw what the minister says. For example, we produced about 860,000, metric tons of copper. However, only 88,000 metric tons is is attributed to artisanal mining licenses. And artisanal mining licenses, those are the licenses that are owned mainly by the Zambian people. So meaning that from the 860, which is like 90% of what is made in the mining sector of the profits are being repatriated. So if 90% of the profits, are being repatriated, it means that we are not going to develop our country. So to actually change that, we need to ensure that we reverse that. It will be good to see, a guaranteed, involvement of Zambia in the local economy. If we look at the mining sector, it will be good to see it at almost 50-50, where Zambians, are guaranteed to actually contribute, to play 50% of what's being produced in the mining sector. But if we're going to continue where we see a 10%, involvement of Zambians, in the mining sector, we can't increase revenue in that matter, in that way. And then we have a lot of other areas that we can look at where, it's questionable, for example, in the agriculture sector, where it is good that we produce 3.7 million tons of maize, but it's also questionable to see who was producing the maize. Was it the commercial farmers, or it was actually the small-scale farmers? But if you look at the poverty that persists around the country, you would know that our farmers are not receiving enough help, to actually be able to thrive. So the budget really does not reflect, Zambians' involvement in it. The economy can grow at an average of 5.2%, as has been reported by both President Hakainde Hichilema and the Minister of Finance, from the time they came into government. But the question is that in that growth of 5.2% of the economy, what is the involvement of Zambians? How have Zambians been involved? Because we just talk about foreigners, So we need to start actually redressing these numbers by ensuring that, when we talk about the GDP, we want to actually quantify, to say, what is the amount of Zambians' involvement in that GDP? So if, for example, we have a GDP of about $35 billion, we want to know that of the $35 billion, how much of that, affected Zambians? Because we can have a GDP of $100 billion, and if Zambians are not actually involved, or they just have a 10% role in there, then we're just playing the ball for the foreigners. And that is where we are today. So we need to relook at this, at how we are going to work on the budget going forward, because we need to make sure that, whatever numbers we feed the people, we know that these numbers are actually affecting our people. On the other hand, even if we raise, the $10.5 billion locally, I still believe that it's not enough, to finance all the needs of the country. It is for this reason that we need to revolutionize. The population is growing, so it needs more resources, to invest in various sectors, such as the health sector, such as the education sector. Of course, there are incremental figures there to support free education. There's incremental figures of about 30% in the health sector, to cover the withdrawal of aid in that area. But is that enough really to actually keep us going? So what we need is to revolutionize. I don't think Zambia can work around with a budget of 10.5 billion. I think we need even double or more, for us to be able to cover a lot of things that we need to cover.
Yeah. Another matter that gets me concerned is the celebration of CDF. I've always held that CDF is not decentralization. The money allocated to CDF is very little, even if you jump it from 1.6 million to 40 million. In fact, in relation to the national budget, you find that is a minuscule amount, something like 3%. So how can you develop a country with 3% of your money allocated to developing your countryside. 3% is literally nothing. In some cases, like in this case, 40 million could be amount just for 1 or 2 feeder roads. It can build schools, it can, but our people get excited because it was previously 1.6. It was increased to 20 something million, 28, 32. Now it's standing at 40. But in relation to the budget, this is very, very little money. It can make significant impact across the country. What is your reflection, or what were some of your highlights in this budget, including CDF?
I also laugh about that. You see, when the Patriotic Front were in power, they had their own priorities. For example, they built roads, they built schools, they built hospitals. They had a lot of infrastructure projects. That was their priority, which under the UPND government, yes, we have seen a number of schools being built. I think the president mentioned in his address that 282, health facilities have been built since the UPND came into government. And when you actually average that per constituency, you find that it's about two health facilities per constituency, which is not enough. I mean, if you look at the needs of the constituencies across the country. So now, so CDF, yes, it has helped in building these 1x3 classroom blocks, desks and stuff like that, because that's a priority of the UPND. But we cannot really say that it is a game changer, because if we equate what the PF were doing in terms of roads and what CDF is doing, you find that the difference is quite massive. If the PF had redirected those funds to actually CDF, you find that their allocation could have been bigger. So if you're going to say 2.5% of a budget, is a game changer, I think we are missing the idea. I think we don't understand the assignment, because even in this budget, the fact that the budget has increased, in as much as CDF has been increased, the percentage of CDF to budget is just about 2.5%, which is very little for you to call it a game changer. Yes, it is helping, such as in the rural communities, the people that are benefiting, they're helping. But if we really need to transform lives around the country, I think we need to invest more. Of course, they can say, there are other, funds that are being channeled to the farmers, such as the Farmer Input Support Programs, the FISIP in the rural areas. But those have been there. But if we want to talk about game changing, I think we need to do more, and also it is also about the issue around the management of CDF. We have heard a lot of stories about how CDF is being mismanaged. I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, the government was, they had a parade where, people from across the country came to witness, the handover of ambulances that were going into these constituencies. Now, because of the funds that are there, such as CDF, so because there's so much mismanagement and abuse. So, the government had to call in the council chairperson and the driver and the ADC, the council secretary and the driver, just to come and witness that. So now this is about so many councils, maybe almost over 80 or to 100 councils across the country who came to witness. Now, you can imagine the amount of money that was spent. So if we can say each council, sent about 5 people, and it was about 80, you find that 5 times 80, gives you almost, about 400, personnel that came from across the country just to come and witness. And these people used CDF money, to be accommodated, to be given allowances for fuel and all that kind of thing. So you can see that in as much as this CDF is supposed to actually help communities, it's also being abused, for political reasons. Because what was the need for the government to actually send the council chair people, council chairperson, the council secretary, the drivers, and the ADC to come and just witness? Why didn't they just get drivers to take those ambulances where they were? And if you look at the number of ambulances, yes, we can say, yes, it's a good thing. But that's what I've been talking about, that budgets are being presented. And when money is collected, from ZRA, it is, channeled to the central treasury. And the central treasury is mandated to spend those monies on health, equipment and facilities such as ambulances. So the question is that why should we be making parades about things that people are supposed to be doing, So CDF is not a game changer. It's a priority of the UPND government. It's good that it's impacting positively communities across the country, those that can afford. But again, if you look at some of the populations of these communities, for example, Mandevu has about almost 150,000 voters, and we're just talking about voters. And if you look at CDF now and where it is today, that's like maybe 1.5 million US dollars. So now, if you're talking about 150,000 people, to be affected by $1.5 million, that's a joke. If you go to Namibia has got a population of almost 2 million, but look at their GDP, per capita in terms of based on their population. So if we want to look at things, we need to look at what impact they're having. If we're not having an impact, then that's a challenge for us to actually change the course and do things differently.
Indeed, indeed. We have the nightmare of load shedding that has affected our country for the last 2.5 years. And we don't seem to have any solution in sight. We recently heard the government say they've scaled down on exports. Today's statement by ZESCO is even more alarming. They were exporting over 500 megawatts, and now they are exporting only 106 megawatts. The underlying factor is still they are still exporting power. Do you see any solution in this budget to resolve the crisis of load shedding? And troubling is that load shedding has affected our economic growth, and you touched on it. Where is this economic growth coming from?
Yeah. Basically, of course, we do understand a number of factors. For example, Zambia is a signatory, we are part of the Southern Africa Power Pool, where we have certain agreements. However, we also understand that ZESCO, they may need to export, for them to actually get a premium tariff in order to cover their operations, because their tariffs are low. However, we have to look at cost-benefit analysis, and the cost-benefit analysis in this regard is that, giving power to the welders, to the saloons, to the local people, stimulates the local economy, creates jobs, keeps people in the job. If we give power to the manufacturing industries that have been suffering, it keeps jobs around. So based on the cost-benefit analysis, it shows that we are not supposed to be exporting power, but we're supposed to actually have the power in the local economy so that we can protect jobs. We can protect businesses that have been struggling and closing because of lack of power. So what ZESCO has done in the past years, where despite the crisis that we faced as a result of the drought and the continued exporting, is shameful, because we have killed a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses have closed as a result of lack of availability of power. So they should have thought about that in the beginning, because it was a crisis or an emergency. Yes, agreements had been signed in the Southern Africa Power Pool, but we should have actually looked at what the country needed, and the country needed to have enough power to protect those industries. Now, to recreate a business, my brother, I can tell you that it's not a simple issue. Businesses that have gone down, for them to come back because there's now availability of power, it takes more than that, because you've wiped up their cash flows, you've wiped up their operations, really. So that was a big mistake. Now, the other issue that I wanted to point out, Ambassador, I think two things. One, we've heard about how the government is claiming that they are providing 10 hours of power in the compounds, in the low-cost neighborhoods. I think we need to also we need to just be very careful about some of these initiatives as we go into the elections. I think this is a call to the general public out there to say, look, there will be a lot of initiatives, that will come as we go into the elections, just for people to get votes. I think we need to be very vigilant and be objective in how we judge. We should not judge based on the benefits that we are having today. And obviously, the reason why the compounds are targeted is because that's where the majority of voters are, and so they want to please them so that they can say, you know what, we've brought back power. And also even the issue of cancellation of export is also an issue of we're going towards election. This will be an election issue. But I'm very happy, that looking at past history, Zambians cannot be fooled. In any event, Africans cannot be fooled anymore. One of the interesting aspect, Ambassador, that I was looking out for in the budget, outside these other things I'm looking at, was in terms of road infrastructure. So you can see that road infrastructure has increased, from 11.9 billion kwacha in the last budget to about 14.4 billion in this year's budget. And obviously, for some of us who live in Lusaka, we've already started seeing people getting busy, closing roads in Ibex and a number of other areas because the election's around the corner. So we need to be worried about that. Anyway, back to the energy. I saw in the budget that the minister said that by next year 1,500 megawatts will be installed. Now, if you look at a number of projects that are work in progress, they won't give you that much to say that by next year it will be 1,500 megawatts that the government can attain. It looks like a campaign song. I don't see how a government that has not managed to do about 500 megawatts. I'm not even sure if they've reached that or they're anywhere closer to that, can actually ensure that 1,500 is done in a year. Of course, yes, there could be work in progress, but what I would have under the energy was for the minister, like he did in the last budget last year. He actually, mentioned a number of areas or a number of projects that were coming up, Samba project, this project, to show that, this is what's going to constitute what will be fed into the national grid. But the 1,500, he just pointed at it vaguely without actually pointing to say which are the projects. Of course, there's Mwamba, 300 megawatts that's coming from there now. Outside Mwamba, okay, there's Chisamba. The president mentioned another 100 megawatts is coming. Outside that, there could be one or two. But how do we get to the 1,500? What I'd expected from the minister, especially that this energy issue is a critical issue, was to actually break down, the projects that make up the 1,500 megawatts, broken down by, by project, and to give us some more information on where these projects are. Just saying vaguely, I think it sounds like a campaign song to me.
The increase in tax, for our dear viewers that are just joining us, we are discussing the review of the national budget. The Minister of Finance and National Planning has presented a 253 billion kwacha budget. Out of that, I think 218 will be raised from taxes, non-tax revenue, grants, and debt, and there'll be a deficit that they are again gunning to borrow from domestic and external financing. You can join. I'll be opening the phone lines just now. I invited my dear brother, the PAC leader, Andyford Mayele Banda, to help me analyze the national budget. We agree this is an election budget. I think it's trying to excite our people into voting the UPND back into power. Look at their measures on, they've scaled down on power exports from 512 to 106 megawatts of power. that they are now only exporting, releasing up to 400 megawatts of power back into our national grid. The scandal there is that they used to hide that they're exporting power, but now they are giving us the data that up to 400 of megawatts of power will now be back into our national grid. Andyford, beyond the loss of businesses, the loss of enterprises, and the loss of revenue to our people, and just a maddening effect that this has caused the last 4 years, the issue of load shedding. They were exporting the power. They've now reduced export. And he says, be careful when they say the compound will be receiving more power. This is where the voters are. They would wink our people. Coming to the numbers again, the numbers are not looking good because the bulk of them, our national debt has jumped, foreign debt, from $11.9 billion in 2021 is now sitting at $15.7 billion. So you will be able to join us. Let me ask my last question before I invite our callers. The minister has announced that he's increasing the fees, number one, for citizenship fees. If you are applying for passport, NRC, and citizenship, the fees will go up. Visa fees, remember, we have had a huge loss of money in visa fees because the president and the UPND government has allowed up to 38 countries to enter our country in a visa-free manner. And these are major places where we get our tourists. US, Canada, China, India, all these are now entering our country free. But the visa fees are up. And then mobile money, your mobile money transactions, there's another fee that has gone up. When you look at these, for me, I call them desperate measures to tax more. The elephant in the room is the mines. The mines. We have the largest exporter is in our country. Over 70% of our exports are copper, cobalt and others. But their contribution to our national GDP, our contribution to the national treasury is very small. And yet we are scrounging to raise money from, including mobile money. What's your reflection when you look at the revenue side of how they want to raise money? Maybe speak to that particular part.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, when the minister is announcing these budgets, he thinks that, if they tax people, whether it's on airtime or mobile money, the impact won't be felt. But first of all, you have a lot of young people that do not have jobs. A lot of young people that, feel the pain, when these taxes are applied on them. I'll give you an example. I think if you buy data for 100 kwacha, in the past you would get about, I think, 10 GB or 11 GB or something. But today, if you buy data for 100 kwacha, you are getting about 7.9, GB, and this is as a result of taxes. So now, if you are going to tax mobile money, I'm just giving an example because I haven't yet looked at the percentages. I'll have a look at that later. But if you're sending someone 100 kwacha, maybe you just need another 1.5 kwacha or 1 kwacha to be able to transfer that. Now, so the idea of taxing more, you'll find that you might need to actually spend 2.5 kwacha to send money over 100 kwacha to somebody. So for the minister, he might think, okay, that's nothing, they won't, it won't affect anyone. But for the common person who doesn't have a job, who, it does not have an income, that's a lot, because it doesn't just go on the transfers, it also goes on the withdraw fees for mobile money, which will definitely increase, which already, you have to cater for that. If you are sending money to somebody, maybe if you're sending a 200, now you have to actually add a 10 kwacha instead of a 5 kwacha and stuff like that. So it is not the way that we should grow our economy by overtaxing our citizens. Now, what's shocking, Ambassador, like you mentioned, in the mining sector, I was interested in the growth of the mineral tax. They're saying that by next year, we are going to move from 860,000 metric tons of copper to about 1 million tons. But if you look at the growth in mineral royalty, it's not reflecting that really. It's not that much, because we are moving in terms of mineral royalty, we are moving from 17.3 billion kwacha to 18.1 billion. So you find that the increment that you're talking about, in the mining sector, is not equivalent to the to the revenue that we're supposed to enjoy as a country. So obviously there is an issue of how how we're taxing the mining, or how we're collecting mineral royalty. I think we are giving too much incentives to the mining sector, and on the other hand, overtaxing our people, to raise this revenue, because really, looking at the dynamics at the moment, to be honest, in my opinion, I didn't see how the UPND government could have raised the expenditure for next year from 217 billion, to 253, because I knew that they don't have enough revenue, to actually cover the difference, and the only way to do this is to make sure that you tax the people more and also borrow more. And what's worrying about the borrowing is that there's a lot of domestic borrowing, which means that the local SMEs, entrepreneurs, have it difficult to access money. It's already difficult, for most entrepreneurs to access money, but looking at the increment, which has increased from 15.4 billion, in 2025 to 21 billion, that's a lot of money. So there's an increment. So the government plans to borrow about $1 billion, dollars, in the local economy, which is a lot of money for economy. So it's quite worrying about how small businesses are going to survive, in this kind of situation. And also we have to relook about how this mining thing is going to work, because why would the increment in mineral royalty not be too much when you're projecting to increase production to about 1 million by next year? In fact, the minister himself says the impact of this mining sector will be felt next year when we get to 1 million. But if you look at the revenue that we are talking about, which is about maybe 600 million kwacha, is not equivalent really, to the increment in production of in the mining sector.
Yeah, sorry, my volume was off, so I was just trying to sort that out. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the first caller. Caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Good evening, Mwamba. Good evening, my tribal cousin Andyford Banda. This is
Andyford Banda.
Calling from Andyford Banda, Mayele. Ni mwana wa malume. You know the Billies and Bandas, we are tribal cousins.
Yeah.
I have two questions, but allow me in just a few seconds. I want just to say what I have in my mind. Today's budget, Mwamba, it has made Zambians to lose hope. This budget, and when you look at the last speech for the president, the last presentation in parliament, this is more like a catchy copy speech. There is no hope for the Zambians. It has just brought more misery on us, especially on energy sector where we have been struggling. Zambians are struggling because we cannot develop this country when we have challenges in energy sector. I was expecting that they are going to pronounce that Kafue Gorge Lower is now full to the capacity, so that the monies which that Kafue Gorge was supposed to generate more power. But what we have heard, Kulwa Musokotwane, they are just promises, and having a budget where you depend on the donors and so forth, that budget and towards general elections, that is another issue. So the questions I've got two questions for my tribal cousin. It's on accountability. How will government guarantee transparency and timely disbursement of the Constituency Development Funds, CDF, giving the past delays and misuse reports at a local levels? Then two, it's about debt and sustainability. With Zambia's rising debt burden, how does this budget strike a balance between borrowing for development and ensuring long-term fiscal sustainability without overburdening citizens with more taxes? Thank you.
Okay, that was our first call. Honorable Banda, maybe we'll be taking this calls as they come in. Just have a reflection on that call from Mr. Zephaniah Piri.
Thank you very much. Of course, it is in my thinking that I like to be objective in the way I look at things. First of all, I do understand that the drought that we had 2023, 2024 was quite severe, and obviously, it will take time, maybe 2 more rain seasons, for us to have actually enough water to be able to run, all the generation, the hydro power stations, properly. Yeah. However, like I mentioned, this emergency had to be tackled in 2 ways. First of all, because it was an emergency, the government did not need to continue exporting power so that they can protect the local economy. The second thing was that they were supposed to be, the government should have been moved quickly at the time, to ensure, that SMEs that needed financing in terms of energy products, solar and stuff like that, are helped. And I think for South Africa, this is what they did correct. In as much as they still have challenges with the load shedding, I think one of the things they did correct was to actually, obviously, the South African financial services sector is quite robust, and it moved in and helped the government sort out, that area. So, and I want to agree with you, Mr. Piri, my cousin, that the budget really did not give a lot of hope in terms of, what the government really plans to do in the energy sector. I think the budget presented a situation where we really have to be prepared to be in this situation for a long time. I really don't think the budget has got, the government really has, a disruptive idea of how they want to sort out, the electricity problem. Apart from, because it's election, they have to cut down the exports and also give those that they were targeting to vote for them a lot of power, which is not correct. Now, how do we talk about accountability? Obviously, going to an election, I can tell you for a fact that I suspect that, there'll be a lot of disbursement of CDF, in timely manner. However, the issue of accountability, that will be questionable. And I can tell you that the next CDF, I think, will have more problems than any other CDF in terms of accountability, because it's an election, but money has to be spent so that the government should be seen that they are working. And this is how African governments operate. This is how African people, operate, especially those that, have not done what they're supposed to do. Now, in terms of debt sustainability, it is clear, when the PND government came into power, they talked too much about how the PF mismanaged the country by overborrowing. However, you have seen that, the debt stock has been increasing from in the last 4 years of them being in power, from 3 billion, 11 billion to about 15.7 billion US dollars. So they've accumulated a debt of over 3 billion. That's external debt. Obvious domestic debt as well is increasing, because even in this year's budget, they plan to borrow a gross, obvious part of it is refinancing, but net, domestic debt is about, 21 billion, which increases the debt. It's about 900 million, US dollars. So there's no sustainability in there, and the fact that, they are taking out money that's supposed to be to stimulate the economy, and so that they can collect more taxes, it doesn't make sense, really. Because that money, imagine if 900 million was available for the SMEs, of course, okay, let's say that the government takes up, 450, the SMEs 450 million US dollars. That money can stimulate the economy. The government doesn't need to always be the ones that, are investing money in the economy. So there's no sustainability there. Then it is also about our economic structure. I gave an example earlier. The government talks about producing 860,000 tons of copper, which majority of it obviously is owned by, foreign companies. We can put it even about 90%, it's owned by foreign companies. Then the artisanal mining company, those that hold artisanal licenses, they're producing about 8,000 tons, So it means that most of the people that are producing the copper are foreigners. So when they make the profit, they're repatriating the profits to develop their countries. So now, if we want to see more revenue being generated, if we want to see an economy that is stimulated, we need to reverse that. We need to start reversing that, so that we have more of our people, participating even in the mining sector, because that is our main economic activity in this country for now, in as much as we want to invest in other areas. But it will be difficult for us to invest in the agricultural sector, for example, if we don't generate enough revenue from the mining sector, which is, a low-hanging fruit for now. Thank you.
When you hear government already is parodying some so-called success, that, for example, they'll be achieving 1 million metric tons of exports of copper and copper production, you and I have already looked at that we are getting very little revenue. So this doesn't in any way benefit us. They are saying that they will begin to work on the Zambia-Tanzania interconnector for the electricity, so that beginning next year, Zambia and Tanzania could be sharing power. Whoever has power can export to the other. They'll be installing 15 acro bridges, and this appears now to be the big one, that they'll be employing 3,500 teachers and 2,000 health workers. And then the famous CDF that has been increased from 36.1 million to 40 million. And of course, then the taxes that will be increased against citizens. These changes, do you think where we are and the amount of time that Honorable Musokotwane has had, he presented the 2021 national budget, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Now is, the budget is already 5 years. Is now at his last budget, the 2026 budget. Will this in any way change the current status of the economy, the current status of despair in the nation?
Well, it will be a facade, to think that anything is going to change. Obviously, as you may be aware, Ambassador, is that there will definitely be some investments that, will be done to try and blindfold the voters to think that the government is busy and they're working. But the actual change won't really happen. Actually, when you talk about the Zambia-Tanzania interconnector, I didn't see, I think I need to be corrected, but I didn't see a figure, allocated to that. So, and you see, these things have been there, for quite some time. So I'm not sure whether they're trying to incorporate a private investor, to take up that, or is it ZESCO, but I didn't see a budget for that. So there is no detail on how that is going to happen. Now, when you talk about employment of teachers and nurses, there is a report that was done by the World Bank, where they projected that, Zambia needs about 10 million jobs in the next 25 years. So ideally, we're supposed to be producing like 400,000 jobs, per year. So this idea of employing, yes, the health sector needs, people to work in there. The education sector needs the teachers, but this is not, an employment initiative. This is just to cover the needs, of the teachers, to reduce the pupil to teacher ratio in the, in the education sector, to make sure that, our mothers are able to give birth, to children that are being attended to by professionals, in the health sector. But it is not the idea of sorting out the job issue, because already that report came out last year. Already this year, our targeted job, should have been not less than 400,000 people to be employed. Now, for us to be able to employ 400,000 people per year, and we are not talking about those that are not employed already. We're not talking about those that, have jobs, but poor quality jobs and poor quality, earnings. We're not talking about that. But already, as we speak today, we are supposed to be producing 400,000 jobs per year. That's according to the World Bank report. And I do agree with that report. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. In Africa at the moment, Ambassador, there is talk of disruption. We are still dealing with a colonial economic system that does not help us, as Africans. It helps the investors. And you have seen how our government has been so, busy talking about, foreign investors without actually looking at the local investors. Now, for us to be able to start resetting the economy, we need to be serious about talking about how Zambians should own the economy, whether it's cleaning businesses. How do we allow foreigners to come and, do cleaning businesses in this country? How do we allow foreigners to be involved, in block making? How do we allow foreigners to be involved, in travel agencies? How do we allow foreigners to be selling second-hand vehicles? So if we really want to stimulate our economy, and if we really want to make sure that we create more jobs, we need to actually reset the economy and ensure that it's owned by the people. And I was on another platform early this week, and I said, look, the UPND claims that they have, fixed the economy. They claim that, 5.2% economic GDP growth or economic growth in the last 4 years. But the question we need to be asking ourselves that who is in that 5.2%? Is it the Zambian people or it's the foreigners? And fixing the economy in today's Africa is about ensuring that your citizens, your indigenous people, have got a greater role to play. It's about dismantling the colonial economic systems that persist to today. So, Ambassador, to answer your question, the fact that, these things that have been spoken about are not solutions, it means that there is no change. Even with the CDF, it's just reallocating of funds from one, from the central government, and it being managed and focusing in the rural areas. I can assure you that there is no, real change that is going to happen. CDF has been increased 40 million next year, but you can see that from 2022 national budget, the CDF was about 25 million, then it moved to about 30, then 36, or, it's been increasing. So already money has been spent with little to show for, over the past four years. So really to expect that a miracle is going to happen, in the next few months before the elections, it's a facade. But there's a consolation. The consolation, Ambassador, on a lighter note, is that there's 1.2 billion, allocated for elections. So we have elections next year. That's a consolation. Thank you.
Indeed, we have elections. They are scheduled. We're worried about the state of ECZ. We know that ECZ in its current structure may not deliver a free and fair election, but there is some money that has been allocated for next year's elections, preparation of the register, and preparation of the actual election that is due next year. I agree with you. CDF, look, first, the people that borrowed, no one has bothered to pay back. Now, councils are being forced to either involve the police, involve lawyers. They should have known from the onset. If it's CDF or people think it's free money, they don't even think that that's a loan to pay back. They think that that grant must benefit them. You know, it's literally a grant. They don't regard it as a loan. The march towards next year's election, and with the mining sector being excused from paying just and fair taxes, the burden being shifted to our people. Do you have a tax policy in your organization? Have you taken time to see how you could deal with the issues of taxes and the national budget differently from how the UPND go about it? I know that you had some insights in your book that you talk about systems. Just explain how this even current system doesn't help with our national budget and with our approach to development.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think really the tax policy cannot be comprehensive without us being in government. We have to be in government. We have to engage at that level, with ZRA and the Minister of Finance and all that. However, we don't believe that increasing taxes and looking for places to tax people is the way to go. The understanding about this issue is very simple. And the simplest thing about this is based on two critical areas, and that's governance side and also the economic system side. So on the governance side is that we need to actually build a system, that awards merit, that it does not discriminate anyone as long as they're Zambians. So we do believe that, we need to amend the constitution, after 2026, but it has to be a people-driven constitution. I think there are a lot of, areas that need to be sorted out in the constitution. We also need to reduce the power of the president. I do agree, that the power of the president must be reduced. This constitution must 110% guarantee our rights. Ambassador, you and me, that we can't do business with the UPND government because we are opposition, and this has been happening. And I'm not saying that it has just happened now. It is, says, governments have been doing that, and so, but we need a civil service, that operates for every citizen, as long as they've got talent and they've got something to put on the table. Once we do that, we're going to see development. We need to award merit. We need to apply meritocracy in the way we award jobs. We've seen so many political and tribally affiliated people getting jobs, either in the civil service, in the parastatals, in the foreign service. That is not going to help our country. So if we want to actually sort out the governance system, of course, we need to restructure, come up with honest reforms that are going to help us, to ensure that we operate effectively and efficiently, ensure that, best ideas are taken in and scrutinized and implemented if need be. Then we are sorting out half of the problem. But if we're going to have a civil service, that only looks out for the interest of those that are in power, the political party in power, then we have a problem. And this is one of the things that, when people voted for the UPND, they hoped this is one of the things that they would actually change. They thought President HH was going to come up with serious reforms, opposed to, bringing cybersecurity, enhancing cybersecurity, law, making it draconian. No, people expected reforms that would actually make, a government operate effectively, as opposed to a government that is only serving the interests of those that are in power. On the other side, Ambassador, in order for us to increase taxes, we need to actually ensure that we stimulate the local economy. And I think I've been laboring on this point even in this program. And to do that, we need to restructure our economic systems. We need to immediately start the resetting and ensuring that Zambians have a guaranteed law. And we need to actually implement local content, legislations that actually guaranteed Zambians based on certain thresholds on how much they can get involved, in each industry or in each sector in Zambia, from 100%, maybe to a minimum of 35%, for example, in the mining sector and in the green fields of the mining sector. We need to start setting up that. That is what is going to actually stimulate the local economy, because If more Zambians are making profit and are reinvesting here, when I make a profit, I want to maybe build a block of flats. Already I'm creating jobs for someone who is a contractor or a bricklayer, if we can call it like that. And that person will have an income and he'll be able to buy boom and sugar and everything. And they'll be paying value added tax on those. And then the government is going to actually raise more money. That is how we're going to grow the economy. But you're thinking that, we have to go and tax the business people, increase their withholding tax, increase their income tax, increase, this and that. It's not going to help. However, we have to look at, the mines. Right now, we cannot rely on the mines. So I even laughed, when I saw in the budget where the minister said, when we hit 1 million next year, we're going to feel the impact. What impact are we going to feel when we hit the 1 million? Already we're in a huge budget deficit. The amount of money that we're expecting to make because of the increment 1 million is not reflected in the budget. So what impact is he talking about? You get the point. Because there is no impact really. The mines are not actually paying their fair share of taxes. First of all, they are using technology now, there's so much mechanization in the mining sector. So they're not employing as many people as they used to employ, after independence or pre-independence time, because a lot of work that time was based on manual labor. So nowadays they're using technology, they're using, machines, to actually do their mining. So the amount of people that are being employed in the mining sector is quite little. So as a result, I don't believe that the mines should be getting incentives because already they're saving on the amount of the cost of labor because of technology. So we need to look at, whether mines are paying their fair share of taxes in the current age of technology.
Did I lose you? Yeah. For our dear viewers, please make your call. I saw that my main line was off, so it's been switched on. You can ask Andyford any of the questions. We are discussing the national budget. What is your reflection? Make the call. The line is now open.
I'm also aware of the electricity problems that Zambia is facing. But despite the problems that we have with the supply of electricity in Zambia, you still supply us with electricity. Again, you would have said we cannot sacrifice our power when we have shortage. But you still give us. Katima Mlilo town, where I come from here, is supplied with power from Zambia. When you have a power outage here, we also have power outage. But that's the brotherhood we are talking about, the neighborhood we're talking about. And we should only be grateful and continue to exist in this manner. You spoke also about the Walls Bendola Lumbumbashi corridor. I want to tell you on.
My dear brother Andyford, the perception by the president, I think he's been talking about the tantamount policy that will not allow people to get free things. We've seen his many senior people saying the culture is different. People have to work hard, and they have to work hard for their, for their livelihood. But there are no jobs provided. And now when government begins to call our people lazy, what comes to your mind where we now, the reason things are bad, that our people are just not working hard?
Well, I think there's a lack of understanding. And to just add to what you've said, Ambassador, when we talk about Zambians must have a role to play in the mining sector, they say, who has refused them to play? Who has refused Zambians to actually do the cleaning? So, we have to protect our people. There is no two ways about it. We have to protect our industries. Ambassador, you know that in China, there is no Facebook. They have their own, social media platforms. And the reason why they don't want to bring Facebook is because they don't want to destroy their local industries. There are many areas that are protected by the Chinese. If you go to South Africa, you cannot buy second-hand Japanese vehicle because they don't want to destroy their, motor industry, by allowing, second-hand vehicles in that country. You can't even drive a Japanese vehicle, for example, if if you receive it from Durban port, you'd have to put it on a carrier and maybe get it in Trokweng border in Botswana or somewhere in Malawi. Sorry, not Malawi, in Zimbabwe, because that is what the economies that that have grown. That's what they do. You can't just dump your goods in that area unless you are allowed. And if they are producing more, you can't allow those goods that are being produced locally to have competition with the foreign goods. You saw what happened with the Ulendo, which was owned by local people, Zambians. But we failed to protect Ulendo and allowed Yango, which is a foreign and highly capitalized company. It cut down on pricing and all those kind of things. And, Ulendo had to die. And, we've heard this story from even local Zambians saying, but they have to compete. They have to compete. And this is the same story that you're bringing, where the government, because they have no idea of how to build these policies of ensuring that we have local content registrations, which protects the local people, which protects the local industry, because it is important, that Zambians must make money and make profit within this country so that those profits can be reinvested. It is important, that a number of these industries must be protected for Zambians. We should not allow, it's the norm everywhere in the world. You can't just walk into these countries and say, what, I want to start making blocks in this country. Who told you that, the people that you want to, where you want to go and make blocks, they can't do it? You see? So we don't have that. Zambia is an open Nichipandaodi, if we can call it like that. Nichipandaodi. People just get in, do whatever they want, whether they want to do poultry, whether they want to sell second-hand clothes, or they want to sell second-hand vehicles, they want to have piggeries. Foreigners, they come with capital. Zambians don't even have access to capital. The government takes out all the money. So how do you expect Zambians to participate in the economy? So it is lack of understanding by officials in government. That's why they say Zambians are lazy, because they're eating. They're eating, and because they're not thinking to say, okay, how do you build policies that can protect our people? And that's a challenge that we have right now. So we have a group of people that may not understand how to protect their own people so that, the local economy can thrive. And like I insist again, for us to collect more taxes, for us to stimulate the local economy, Zambians must be guaranteed a role. They must be protected in a number of areas. We have, I think, Mukumbi, who is a cleaning association of Zambia president, who was arrested, a few months ago for condemning, one of these government organizations of giving a foreigner a cleaning contract. Why would you do that in 2025 when Africa, the young people, the Gen Zs are crying to say, we are tired of these colonial economic systems. We want to own the economies as Africans. Now we have information. We have seen that, the systems that we are still working with come from colonial times. We want to own them. Then you arrest the guy for complaining, for speaking for the masses. That is not correct.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Colleagues will be winding up. I don't know where the callers are. I apologize that my phone was off. The main phone was off. I didn't realize, but I've since switched it on. We were discussing the national budget. It's one of the series of reviews we are doing this week. We know most of you are still appreciating the details, but we thought that we could blow the whistle. We could start by some of our highlights that we've seen, and I brought Honorable Andyford Mayele Banda to help me with review of the budget. And I think he's gone through the budget. First of all, it's an election budget, so we recognize that it's an election budget, trying to make quick appeasement, But we've also agreed that this budget is not transformative in nature. Even the ambitions of jobs that are being created in the health sector, 2,000 jobs and 3,000 jobs in the education sector. These are mere recruitment because they are just ballooning the wage bill for the public sector. They are not real jobs that are being created by industry. This is jobs that are created because of recruitment. Mayele Banda reviewed a good number that I loved it, that we need about 400,000 new jobs created in the economy to make impact on the state of our poverty, to make impact on the state of our economy, to make impact on our GDP. 400,000 jobs. So you can't be proud of jobs of 5,000. That is a mere a drop in the ocean. Sorry, I seem to have a caller. Like I said, my main number was off. I don't know for one reason or another, but let me take this call. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Greetings, Ambassador Mwamba. This is Situmbeko from California.
Oh, yes, Situmbeko. Thank you. Good day. And please give us your name and where you're calling. You've told us you're calling from California. Queen Pumi, the leader of... Yes, my dear sister.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Greetings to President.
Hello, Madam Pumulo. I hope you are able to hear me. Greetings to you and hope you're well.
I think we're a little bit depressed, to be honest, waking up to look at the budget is like, I think that's why people are not even calling. It's like depressing. It's like we have hit a rock bottom. This is their last year, the last budget of their 5 years. And, looking at the budget is like, oh my God,
What was your reflection of the budget? What was your reflection, Queen Pumi, of the budget?
I think, it's a failed project. I'm looking at the budget, is the amount of money. I am looking at the domestic revenue. I'm thinking, where is this money coming from? They're getting 81% from domestic. So from where? And I look at the mining. Mining. They are looking at 1.2 billion, and they are looking to increase to 1 million metric tons. And they are only talking about copper. What about the other minerals, cobalt, nickel? In this government of UPND, they opened the largest cobalt mine there. And where is the account for the funds from this largest? The education is 13% is a drop in the ocean. And we know that to develop a nation, you need to fund education, at least even 30%. I've seen in China what they did in China, how they changed, how they took their country out of poverty is by, they said, just putting a high percentage. They funded education and healthcare. So we see only a 13% in education. We see 10% in health. And they are blaming the COVID. Okay, yes, COVID happened, but what did they do? So instead of empowering citizens, they took away power. So it's like we have a double tragedy. We had the COVID, and now the load shedding is a second tragedy, which was imposed by UPND to the peoples of Zambia. And the other thing that I want to say is they are bringing back 400 megawatts. And for 2-3 years, people have lived without these 400 megawatts, and it was being exported. So we don't get an income and expenditure at the end of the year. I've never seen an income and expenditure statement by this government, which I really want to see how all these budgets, how they are utilizing the money. But we've also seen in the middle of the year, they've come to ask for extra funding. You know, we see some MPs complaining that they didn't even receive their allocated CDF funding, but they have increased the CDF amounts. It's just like, you know, my mind is just going. I'm just like, so are they going, how much did they make from this 400 megawatts they exported? And are they going to give the money back? Or like there's no explanation to what they did with the income they got from exporting the power. You know, are they going to give some money back to citizens? And they're telling us they're going to take most of the power to the compounds where we have the most of the voters. You know, so this is vote buying. So I have so many questions. I wish the Minister of Finance himself can have an open meeting and we can just ask him questions, because I don't know. Everything is in disarray.
Thank you, Queen Pumi. I'm grateful. Thank you, Queen Pumi.
Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
My name is Owen Mdenda, Ambassador Mwamba.
Yes, Mr. Mdenda. Make your contributions or questions.
I'm calling you from Lusaka.
Okay.
Yes. You know, there's this issue of the mines and the taxation. I think this issue has been hanging for quite some time now. You know, it's high time people became honest over this issue. You know, in this new world of comparative and relative advantage, you find that Britain itself does not produce its own beef. So what are the Britons doing? They'll drive that, because if they're going to produce beef from Britain, for them to buy that hay and feed a cow, maybe if it's going to be a natural organic cow, maybe for 5-7 years, maybe a kg of beef in Britain would be maybe even 100,000 pounds. So they import, like from Botswana, Botswana is able to produce it cheaply because they just use their natural habitation, so to say. And even as a country, I saw some pronouncement where we also want to get into that market. So this issue of copper, for instance, if you look at the comparative advantage of producing copper here in Zambia, and let's compare it maybe with a country like Chile. To start with, Chile has got a port there. It's just direct to the ocean. Once someone mines from there, they're just able to put that copper on the ship it takes to the London Stock Exchange. We had a lot of mines that were closed previously. Because when we try to stock up, but okay, let's not assume that whenever we go, they are just investors there seated waiting to come to Zambia and whatever. People need to compete for these investors. And there are certain incentives that you have to give. For instance, our copper here, when you produce it, first of all, to ferry it to South Africa, how much cost does it come with to just go to South Africa before it's even put on ports? How many countries does it go through? Even in terms of fuel transportation and all those taxes that they have to be paid there.
My brother, be brief. What are you saying? Are you saying the cost of production for copper is high?
I'm trying to say, our copper production, I think, let's not try to compare incentives that these people are supposed to give. Like, let's not all blame all these incentives. I would rather it one day, one of these politicians, especially Comrade Mayele, I know he's a very learned man. Let him give us a proper background of how does he think it can be better done. Because as far as things stand, I think what we have, the model we have right now, is okay for us as a country.
Have you taken time to study what has happened in the DRC?
You can advise Comrade Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
Comparative advantage. I would rather a comparative analysis of this whole thing, because I think mostly I've just seen politics at play. People are not explaining things the way they're supposed to be done.
Thank you.
We are sharing. I want to believe you.
Okay.
So I'll draw your analysis on the DRC scenario.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome.
Well, it's like now our callers are coming on. Let's just take some more calls so to allow Honorable Andyford Banda. And please take cognizance of that comparative advantage to Peru and Chile and Zambia, and he says, yeah, okay, they'll call back. I can see their line is not connecting. Another person has said, I've been trying to call, the network is just terrible. Oh, okay. So I thought the callers maybe were afraid of a technical subject, but also network seems to be an issue. Honorable Andyford Banda, I don't know if you've looked at the DRC scenario. DRC has ramped up production. It has now risen from number 10th in copper production to literally number 2 in the world. It has risen from 700,000 metric tons 5 years ago to 3.2 million metric tons. And DRC is at war. DRC doesn't have infrastructure, doesn't have reliable power. How are they doing it? Yet we have everything, and we throw all these incentives to the mining sector. Capital equipment is tax-free, VAT refunded. We have reduced mineral royalty tax from non-deductible to deductible, and we've even reduced the actual mineral royalty from 6-point-something% to under 3%. We've thrown a lot of incentives, including the price of power. Government and ZESCO is importing power for the mines. When the mines have capacity to import their own power, there are a lot of incentives that we've thrown at the mines with very little return. Our caller was saying, maybe you have to look at what Chile's production could be lower. What are your views there?
Well, I think, unlike in the energy sector where it is agreeable that the tariffs have been low for quite some time, I think in the copper industry, actually, we cannot, talk about, that the production costs are quite high. Like you've mentioned, Ambassador, I think everything that the mining sector has wanted, they've gotten, especially under the UPND government. So there's no reason for them to say, no, we are not able to produce. I mean, even Congo is not I lived in Kinshasa. There is a part of DRC that is somewhere there in Bakongo, when you're in Kinshasa, you drive to Bakongo by the sea there. But that's not where the copper is being produced. The copper is produced here in Katanga, Lubumbashi, Kolwezi and stuff. So, and they're thriving, and and also, in Congo they've got a serious local content registration, especially when it comes to mine supplying. Not like the way here foreigners are able to get 100% contracts, to supply in the mine. So I really don't think we should worry about that. And the other issue that, Ambassador, we should not think that the cost of production here, is what makes, the government, to give incentives. I don't think it is the cost of production. I think we just have a group of investors that are dishonest, that don't want to actually, who think that we, the people of Zambia, don't deserve, to get our fair share of the revenues from the mining sector. The other issue is that we need to understand the dynamics of the industry right now. And the reason why actually the prices are going up is because, the demand for copper is growing as we go because of energy transition, and there will be more demand for copper. So what we should be doing actually, instead of giving incentives to mining sector, to say for once, once this demand hits the top, how do we benefit as a country? You must remember that from the 1920s, even in the 1960s, there's been various episodes where demand for copper has gone up, but we as a country has not benefited. The government, they know, they have this information. We all know that where we're going in the future, one of the reasons why we have all these investors, whether it's port, why Barrick is investing over $2 billion in expansion, FQM, and why the Chinese are dewatering at Shaft 28, why suddenly you have old mines being opened. It's not by accident. is because they're positioning themselves, for energy transition. The copper prices are going to go up. So what we need is a country that is not going to say, you know what, time up, it's now time for us to benefit. We should not even be thinking about comparing ourselves with anyone. The copper prices are projected to go up because, copper demand is projected to go up in the already now, because of energy transition. Pomola Situmbeko, yes, I do agree with you that the budget is quite depressing. Like Ambassador mentioned in his opening remarks, is because it's not transformative, and 5 years. So depressing because you say, wow, I mean, it's already 5 years of the UPND. They have presented their last budget and nothing has changed. The debt keeps going up. Domestic debt, keeps going up. Crowding of funds from the domestic market keeps going up. And nothing is changing. And the populations are growing. What we need is something disruptive. I do agree we need to invest in the education sector, and we do agree, with the UPND on the free education. But we also need to ensure that we have, quality education. We just don't want to produce people that can speak English, and when investors come, they say, no, you don't have, local expertise. So it's quite urgent that we raise enough resources, to improve the quality as we have provided for free. Yes, educate people, but what kind of education are we giving them? How many times have we heard this thing to say, you don't have local expertise? So how do we deal with that? We give quality education, and to give quality education, to increase the budgets, we need to raise more revenue. Raising more revenue will not come by actually crowding out it. We need to actually restructure economic systems so that, we start, empowering our own people, to run the economy. I agree with you again. If you look at, the increase of production that the UPND are projecting next year to 1 million, and I mentioned this earlier, and if you look at the increase in mineral royalty, you find that the difference is like there's no increment, which is also depressing, really. And on the energy sector, I think there's one issue that the UPND likes to say, there's net metering. And I was thinking, Ambassador, that, what? I think it's high time we ask them real questions about this net metering. How many megawatts of power have they generated from net metering, and how many customers do they have? Because you can just be talking about net metering, but there's nothing that's happening there. Maybe it's not an initiative that anyone is taking up. Maybe it's not even working. It's just in speeches, because they are not giving us more details on how many customers or suppliers have they signed up on net metering, and how many
Sorry, Mr.
megawatts
Banda,
of
let me
power have
just see
they
if I can
produced.
take the last caller. Hello,
Sure.
caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Ambassador,
Yes, sir.
thank you so much. I've been trying to call, but really, finally, I've gotten through. I don't know. I was even accusing Zikta to say they've done something. You see, this budget, Ambassador, is so depressing. My name is Jafet Munaninga. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, my name is Jafet Munaninga. I'm calling from Choma.
Thank you. We can hear you.
Hello?
Make your contribution. We can hear
Yes,
you.
sir. So I was saying this budget is so disappointing. It's so annoying. I don't know, maybe it's because it's the last budget, but you see, we were expecting this government of ours to do more. But the problem that I find is that it's like they're now suppressing the citizens with taxes, And really, when you look at Airtel transactions, they are saying, no, they are increasing the taxes. Look at the majority voter, they are surviving by, say, maybe $2, $3 a day, and then you want to impose all these taxes on them. People were expecting to hear about the pay as you earn. I think that has not been touched. So basically, I like how Mr. Anson, is it Anson?
Andyford
Banda.
Mayele Banda, yes.
Andyford Banda. I think this man is too brainy, you know. I like the way he's articulating issues. Well, I think he's doing the most. And I thank you so much for bringing this man. He's too brainy. Right now, I'm listening and I'm thinking, where was he all along? But all in all, I really want to thank you for this podcast. I thank you for this man. He's really opening us, you know. He's really opening us. I don't want to waste much time. I thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I don't know what happened to the calls today. Most of them are just coming as missed calls, and I've seen there are many of them, but they were not coming through. I think it must be in the network issue back home. But we thought with the power being given to our people in township, it must be easy. But it doesn't look so. It doesn't look so. So that story doesn't match up. There's another caller. Sorry, Andyford. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Good evening, Ambassador. My name is Mrs. Anonymous from the AI Kingdom.
Yes, Miss Anonymous.
I just have two quick issues. What is my maybe comment on the budget? Business usual, nothing transformative, nothing ambitious, and there was a quick analysis done. The 40% budget goes to salaries and wages, and 51% goes to procurement. The big question that has to be asked is procurement. We know that's where we have source. It's a source of so, and we are going at 26 general elections. So, business as usual, rhetorically, nothing transformative, nothing ambitious, improving the living standard of the people. 44% of the budget goes to wages and salaries, 51% to procurement. So that is the summary of the budget. And what does Mr. Banda think? What is his what can he say from that perspective that I've presented? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Zicta seems to have freed the phones just when you're about to leave. Yeah, please answer those questions and then we begin to offer your last remarks.
Mr. Japhet Malunga, thank you so much. Yeah, like I indicated earlier in the program, the proposed taxing of mobile money transactions where, for someone who's in government, a 2 kwacha doesn't mean anything to them. So they think that if they impose that, on an ordinary person where a 2 kwacha means something, you can buy talk time for 2 kwacha, by the way. So you are taking away that privilege from the person by taxing them, because you want to raise money, which you don't have, to finance programs to win an election. So you have to make them suffer, and then you have to create a picture as if you're doing something so that they should vote for you, which is not correct. It's quite depressing. But the consolation, Mr. Malunga, in the budget is that there is 1.2 billion that is going to elections. So let's be consoled by that small figure there. It is a game changer. The 1.2 billion, which is general elections, it is a game changer. So let's be consoled by that and make the right decision next year and bring about people that actually can revolutionize our Zambian economy. And thank you so much for your complimentary message. I really appreciate it. It's very encouraging, and we look forward to continue engaging with you. Mrs. Anonymous from the AI Kingdom. That is a very good analysis. I want to be honest that I have not gone through those details as I was preparing for the program. But obviously, the 51% on procurement is clear. You know how African governments do when they're going to an election. They get busy, in procurement. However, we cannot afford in this time and age to have governments that are going to just think about elections. I listened to President Hakainde Hichilema's speech in Parliament, and obviously he was trying to paint a good picture of what the UPND has done in the last 4 years or 4 years plus. However, if you look at those numbers deeply, you find that those numbers, they don't mean nothing. They're just organic growth, growth that is expected from a government that is collecting taxes from the people and investing that money, in various programs such as the health sector. They have to invest the money. So why should the people be clapping for giving us an account of what they did? Because where else was the money going to go? So there is no revolution. There's nothing revolutionary that has happened in the last 5 years of the UPND budgets, and maybe that's why people are saying they're depressed, because really time has flown, and we are here. The UPND has presented its last budget, which has increased domestic borrowing, putting more pressure on the entrepreneurs who cannot access that money for their businesses. So it's quite depressing. So my comment really is that we need to restructure this budget, so that it can have more areas where, are impactful on the people. Because whatever is in the budget, it's the same template that we've been using over the past 5 years. If you look at I looked at all the budgets from 2022 up to today, you find that the template is the same. They're just changing figures. Nothing has changed, So, and it could be a template that has been used by previous governments. So it's quite depressing, really, that already time has flown. And one depressing thing, Ambassador, that I did not mention was the fact that the UPND government, when they came into power, they spoke about debt restructuring, and they've been in power for 4 years. And they have, they say they have restructured 92% of the debt, which they have been, I think we're supposed to start paying this debt in the next, by 2031 or something like that, which is the next 6-7 years. However, there is no indication right now to say, how are we going to pay that debt? It's falls due in 2031. There's nothing in the budget that indicates that we're working towards repaying that. The only thing that is there is that we're increasing domestic debt. We're increasing debt, really, whether it's domestic or external, So now I got worried to say, okay, fine, the debt was restructured, but already 4 years we've done nothing, to say that, okay, now we are preparing to pay that debt in 2021. Now, when are we going to prepare? Because we cannot say, no, this is now 2030, so let's not start preparing to pay the debt next year. That was also part of my depression today, outside the fact that, domestic borrowing has increased, meaning that much more difficult conditions for the entrepreneurs. So really, for this budget by the UPND, it's been quite disappointing, because people really expected a lot from the time they came into government. By the time they're doing the final budget, we should have said, what, something has been done. But if you look at the budget, and if you look at all the budgets, you just find this is just organic growth that is expected. Also, if you look at the increment, which is unjustified, from 217 billion in 2025 to 253 billion now, it's unjustified, because really it's just about taxes and borrowing. The reason is because of elections. Thank you.
Andyford Mayele Banda is the one we're hosting today to review the national budget. I've lined up various voices to come and speak to this budget. This budget is very significant because it's the last budget before we go to elections. It's Musokotwane's last budget. Has it been transformative? Will it change anything? Will it rescue the election bid of UPND and President Hakainde Hichilema? From the onset and from the reflections we've done today, it appears not. Because in fact, what this budget has done is to bring depression on people. It has taken away hope. It's not transformative. It's not hopeful. It doesn't seem to change anything. It will not change the livelihoods of our people in the next 1 year. why people are not excited about the increase of CDF to 40 million is because CDF has not worked at 28 million, at 36 million. So how will it work at 40 million? It doesn't matter how much you throw, how much money you throw at this. And I've always advised the UPND that CDF is not, is not in any way devolving power to our people. It is not in any way a policy of devolution. It's not in any way a policy that can transform our country. There is a development plan, I think, that is easier if and CDF is a very small component, very, very small component in the devolution of power to the local and districts, not in the manner they've approached, thinking that CDF will be the panacea of development. Honorable Andyford Banda, just say your last remarks before we close.
Thank you very much to all the callers that tune in. Unfortunately, due to technology, we couldn't get a lot of calls, but the ones that have come in are enough to actually assess what people think about the budget. It's unfortunate that the UPND have presented the final budget, that has not really transformed. There are 5 budgets have not really transformed the lives of the Zambian people. And I think that the only consolation that we can get from the budget, I'll insist, is a line item called general elections, 1.2 billion. I think let that be the game changer, as we go into 2026. Otherwise, we should not give up as a country. We should keep striving to elect the right leaders who can change this country. At the right time, I believe that we'll get it right. I mean, China did it. United Arab Emirates did it. Singapore has done it. Malaysia, and many other examples. And I believe that the fact that we have, both human and natural resources, once we have the right leaders that are going to revolutionize our governance systems, our economic systems, I believe that we can get it right. And 2026, it's a year for us to do something different. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the Republic of Zambia. Have a good evening or afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you for finding time to come and be with us on this review of the national budget. I'm very grateful, Mr. Andyford Mayele Banda, for your time and for your thoughts on the budget. We have lined up Dr. Grieve Chelwa. I think he'll be coming on Sunday. I'll confirm with you. We have Honorable Mtotwe Kafwaya. Also, just for the issues of the budget, I've got about 4 guests that I have lined up just to come and give a reflection. And like I stated, this budget is very key because it's the last budget for the UPND. Will they manage to rescue what they couldn't rescue in the last 5 years? And Andyford has asked even a critical question. We see no plans of how they will repay the budget they've rescheduled. 2032 looks so far away. But if we are going to 2026, you better plan not for elections, but plan for generations. And Andyford Banda was urging government to have looked beyond. This budget has not provided that inspiration. So God bless you. Until we see you next time, thank you very much. And thank you to my special guest and to you, all the callers that came. Your phones are now just coming in. We want to call. So we've done 2 hours, maybe it's Zikta, maybe whatever happened. But I can see now my phone is buzzing. But it's too late. You still can contribute on our Facebook page. Just write. I think Andyford can see and I can see and will contribute. Thank you. God bless you.
That corridor was developed. I'm also aware of the electricity problems that Zambia is facing. But despite the problems that we have with the supply of electricity in Zambia, you still supply us with electricity. Again, you would have said, we cannot sacrifice our power when we have shortage. But you still give us. Katima Mlilo town, where I come from here, is supplied with power from Zambia. When you have a power outage here, we also have power outage. But that's the brotherhood we are talking about, the neighborhood we're talking about. And we should only be grateful and continue to exist in this manner. You spoke also about the Walls Bay Ndola Lumbumbashi corridor. I want.
Amitapendwa ya vintu ifisume vyoza kula kuibukisha kana depotimo lwimbo watemenwa katongi abazunga batita katongi nakula kuibukisha kateka kaibukubuna kapona neseko syove pamenso yangu abaume baya iyaba baume iyaba baume kateka wabantu twakulira lelo twakulira shikakukonke milimo shove Eti kume mokula ndolola vale lilo wingi
Iseko wingi mwakwete Iseko wingi mwakwete Mwaya mwende wino tata wesu
Katushi muchi mokege Wali bomba kale Lomba mwatu jatule lilaki Ukula bebyo wachito wingi Imisebo wapangiri obuingi Ukuchinjo lusako kumoneko busaka Mama Kutituwa na basiani Chakwa katuse